Hey guys, LootWizard here with another Gems of War video for you with the Soulforge, and we got a new event going on, so let's get right into it. First of all, let's head over to the Soulforge and see what's in there. Let's check out weapons here first. I don't think there's really anything too amazing here. We do have a couple of these mana generating weapons for the Urskaya Kingdom and Urska allied troops. So they're okay weapons, but usually I don't recommend these sorts of weapons unless there's really, really good troops in that kingdom or that troop type. This one, there's some okay troops for this kingdom, but nothing really amazing, so I don't think I'm going to recommend these two. But they are only 300 diamonds. If you're trying to collect these sorts of weapons, which I am at this point in the game, so I always try to get these if I don't have them. But I'm not going to recommend those because if you're a newer player, you can save these diamonds and get yourself a really good mythic troop, or get yourself a weapon like rope dart or trickster shot. Those are weapons that you definitely want to save your diamonds for. So I'm not going to recommend these this week. Doomed baton here, I'm not going to recommend this either because I don't think it's really that great of a doomed weapon. There's much better ones for you to save up for. So let's head over to troops, and I already did look at all the summoning stones, and there's nothing really in there that I can recommend trying to go for this week. So let's head over to legendaries and mythic troops, take a look at these. For legendaries, we have Hydra, we have King Selnus, we have King Highforge, and we have Saguaro. Now, out of those four, I would say that probably King Selnus is the best out of the. He's just a pretty good one. Wild Folk allies are really good. Wild Folk troops are really good in this game. And this is the legendary card for the Wild Folk troops, and it gives all Wild Folks 50% starting mana, so that's amazing. And on top of that, it's pretty low mana cost for a legendary troop. And it deals splash damage to the enemy, boosted by Wild Folk allies, so you get a little extra damage there. It steals one magic from all enemies affected, and it burns all enemies. So it's a decent legendary card. I think it's the best this week out of these four. But I'm not going to recommend crafting it because it is 800 diamonds. But it is still a good legendary. I use it from time to time with other Wild Folk. Now, second is going to be King Highforge. Still not really the greatest legendary you can get in the game, but for this week, it is my second best pick. It does stun the last two enemies, deals damage to them, boosted by allied dwarves, summons a random dwarf, and it does make all dwarf allies start with 50% mana. There's a couple of dwarf troops that are pretty good, but not really too many of them. There's maybe two or three that I can, list off the top of my head. Like King Bloodhammer is like one of the best dwarf. I think it's a dwarf troop. But so then for Saguaro and Hydra, Saguaro is going to take the third spot because Hydra is one of the worst legendary troops in the game. Deals scatter damage boosted by its missing life. So really, it's good. The way to get the most damage out of this is if this has like one life left. Which, how do you even do that? It's a really bad troop. And it's still a pretty high mana cost, 16. It's higher than King Selnus. So, Hydra needs a needs a buff. Like seriously, it needs a rework or some kind of buff because it is terrible. There are epic troops, and maybe even common troops that are better than Hydra. And Hydra is a legendary. It makes really no sense to me. So, yeah, those are the legendaries there. And for mythic troops, we have Draculus, we have Yasmine's Chosen, Flame of Anu, and Ironhawk. Now, they're not great mythics this week, but picking them here, it's hard. It really is. Flame of Anu is the last place out of these four. That's for sure. That's not a hard pick. The other three, it's a little more difficult to pick. And some of it's going to be my personal opinion on this, just because, in my experience of how I've used these troops, there might be better teams out there that can use these troops better. And maybe you guys have figured that out, but in my experience, I think Yasmine's Chosen is better than Draculus, just because you have it doesn't do as much damage as Draculus, but when you consider that it can loop. Now, it creates 10 green gems, and it takes green as its mana here, so if you have, if you keep casting it, it's a possibility that it can keep funneling mana back into itself. And if you use it with a troop like King Gobtruffle or Queen Beatrix, that generates brown and green mana, and this uses brown, so you can generate brown mana. The brown mana will fill this troop up, and then when you cast this, it'll create 10 green gems, and that'll go back into King Gobtruffle, power it up, and then you can cast that again, get an extra turn, and then it'll create brown to power this up. So if you use it with a combination of those troops, this can be pretty deadly. And plus it entangles enemies when you match green gems, which is great. So it's a pretty good mythic troop. I think in combination with like King Gobtruffle or Queen Beatrix, this is a really good mythic troop to use. Better than using it with Draculus. Now it is a low mana cost of 20. It does steal life, so stealing life is better than just doing true damage. But King Draculus, I just haven't had as much. It doesn't generate any mana. It's all it's doing. It has one thing that it does, and that is steals life from all enemies. And that can be dodged if the enemy has Submerge. So that's a kind of a negative there. But it's an okay mythic. I'm not saying it's the worst ever, but that's all it does is just one thing. And whereas Yasmine's Chosen is doing 3 different things here. It's doing damage, it's entangling enemies when it matches green, and it's creating 10 green gems. So it's doing damage and it's generating mana. Those are 2 things that it's doing, which is pretty good. So I would say Yasmine's Chosen is better than Draculus. Now, the third mythic down here is Ironhawk, and this is an interesting mythic troop. Even though it has a 25 mana cost, Ironhawk is going to create 12 Doom Skulls, and then it explodes, for me, 14 gems. Now, this is about a whole board explosion whenever you get close to about 15 gems being exploded. I think it's even a dozen, but it's around that where you get pretty much a full board explosion. And when Doom Skulls explode, they actually do damage to the first enemy. So this is going to be doing a good amount of damage with that explosion that's going to happen. But the explosion is also generating mana, not only for itself, but for other troops. And it will deal 5 damage to all enemies when an ally casts a spell. And if you wanted to, you could even double up. If you're lucky enough to get 2 of these troops, you can put 2 of them in the same team. And every single time that you cast a spell, it will do 10 damage then to all enemy troops. So if you want to do like speed farming, like with a level 1 difficulty in Explore, this thing would be the way to do it. It would just be a really quick speed way to farm. If you're doing like vault keys, if you're farming for those, with the gnomes and all that kind of stuff, this might be a good way to farm those in Explorer 1 with the passive trait here. Just double these up for 2 of them, and you can just, every single time you cast a spell, 10 damage is going to happen to all of them. So that's pretty cool. But it does do a significant amount of damage even to higher enemies. So it does generate mana, but it doesn't really loop necessarily because it's not generating one particular color of mana. The only way that you could really, if you use this with like Mountain Crusher, you could probably guarantee that you're going to get a lot of 4 matches when it explodes because of the brown, and it does take brown mana here. So that's a pretty good option. Yasmine's Chosen, between Yasmine's Chosen and Ironhawk, which one is the better one? That's kind of hard for me to pick. I think I'm going to actually just say... I don't know. It's really hard, but Yasmine's Chosen with the combination of Gobtruffle or Queen Beatrix. Yasmine's Chosen is pretty good. Depends on what you really want to do, but I kind of want to say that Ironhawk and Yasmine's Chosen is a tie because they have different functions, different uses. They both do damage and they both generate mana. So I'm going to go ahead and just say Ironhawk and Yasmine's Chosen are tied for me this week. between those. Ironhawk, I might favor it personally a little bit more just because I enjoy the explosions um, rather than just creating gems. I do like explosions a lot, so I'm going to favor Ironhawk personally a little more, but I think if I'm being completely fair, I'm going to say that Yasmine's Chosen and Ironhawk are pretty much tied for Mythics this week. And Draculus would be third there, and then Flame of Anu needs a rework, needs a buff of some kind. It's just not good for a Mythic Troop. If it was a legendary, I'd understand, but its abilities and what it does is just not good for it being a mythic. So that's what I think this week about the troops. And if you don't have the Ironhawk yet, it might be worth picking it up. Same with Yasmine's Chosen. There's definitely better mythics out there, but those are still pretty good ones with certain teams and troops. So that's what I think of that. Let's head over to the shop and take a look at the old troop here. Weekly event, the Werverine troop, and transforming claws, its ability, it'll deal 16 damage to an enemy. If there are any lycanthropy gems on the board, inflict them with lycanthropy and get my mana back. Okay. They're really going around this new mechanic here. I noticed that like last turn there was a troop that had some of that too. And there's a 15% chance to transform a random beast into a random beast each turn. However, there is a cumulative 10% chance to recover each. It's basically like Deathmark, except Deathmark has a 10% chance. This has a 15% chance. So interesting troop if you want to focus in on that mechanic. It is 400 glory this week, and we do get 2 arcane skull trait stones with it, which is a pretty good deal. Whenever I see that we get 2 arcane trait stones, I like to really stock up on some of those. And if you're really, really rich with glory, I have 168,000. You can't really see it because my camera face is in the way. But in the top right corner, it says I have 168,000 glory. I used to have around 200,000, but I used some of those for opening keys. But if you're as rich as I am in glory or richer, I know there's people out there that have way more glory. They probably have like millions. And if you want to get some quick gold, whenever these events happen, this is a quick way to get 1,000,000 gold. Is if 80,000 glory can be converted basically every single week. About that can be converted into 1,000,000 gold. Some weeks it's a little less, I think, because right now it's 400. Some weeks we have 300 glory here, which it'll be a little less than this maybe. But you get 1,000,000 gold for that amount of glory. So if you're really good at farming glory, you can turn that into big amounts of gold pretty fast. That's just a little side note there. But let's go on to the events here. So we have Guild Wars this week, and last time that happened, I did videos for each day. I don't think I'm gonna have the time this week to do that this time. But you know, enough of you guys have probably been watching my channel enough where you know basically everything that I think about Guild Wars, and I need better like teams for sure for some of these days. But you basically just want to put, you know, some points here in your sentinels. You want to make sure your defense teams all have unique troops, unique weapons for each day to maximize your points. Current bonus points earned from using 4 different troops is 2,000. Potential bonus points for the week using 24 different troops, you get an extra 12,000 points. And you're just going to get that passively when you do your battles as long as you have your defense teams set up that way. And it doesn't even really matter if your defense teams are that good. As long as you have unique troops in all of them, you're going to get the same bonus points. As far as your defense teams being good, you should try to focus on something that's difficult for the attacking guild. But it doesn't matter as far as points are concerned with defense. Now, whenever you're attacking, you want to use, to maximize your points, you want to use a team with weapon or troops that all contain the color of that day. So if it's a red day, you want to use a weapon and all troops that have that color in it to maximize your points. So that's basically Guild Wars. So let's go on to the event this week. It looks like we're going to have 2 events plus Guild Wars this week. We got Sieges starting up in about 3.5 days from now. But right now we have this world event called Beast Whisperer. And it looks like it's using troops from the Urskaya Kingdom. So I'm going to go ahead here in the shop. I'm going to go ahead and buy enough to get myself a medal. Now you could just buy up to get yourself a badge. And that's still going to give you some boost in the event. But I like to buy up enough where I can get an actual medal. Because that's going to give me the 160%. Now, I don't know if it's going to be... yeah, it says here 160% spell damage for all troops in the current event. So that's really cool. And I'm just going to go ahead and put a badge of Nisha in there. I need to do way more explore battles. You guys probably can see here my medals are pretty low and junk. I don't do as much explore battles as I should to get the badges and the medals here. But for an event like this, when the spell damage is 160% right here, we have 160% extra spell damage for all troops. Well, that's why I'm going to keep the Nisha medals on here, because that is boosting my magic damage and that's spell damage. So with the medal on there plus the extra spell damage, it's good. So let's go back here. Let's see, now that we got our medal equipped, let's see what kind of team we can build here. Troop restrictions is the Kingdom of Urskaya. And so, yeah. There's a few decent troops in here. So if we go base rarity, I'll go over a couple of them. Doomclaw is the mythic. Does do damage to a single enemy, and then it has 25 separate chances of devouring enemies above and below whichever one you hit. I don't really like this troop as much because it 25% chance to devour is pretty low. We do have Kurandra here, which focuses on skulls, so we're going to pass over that because it's not skull damage that's being boosted, it is spell damage that's being boosted. This is a skull troop as well, but King Mikhail is going to do damage, spell damage to all enemies, so that's a good one. Urskula is our legendary card that makes all Urska allies start with 50% mana, so I like that. And then we also have another legendary card here, which I like. I think it's pretty good. It's Ursuvius, which this thing here will do damage to all enemies, and that's boosted by burning and enraged allies and enemies. And of course, it has a 50% chance to burn a random enemy at the start of its turn. So that's really good there. And so I'm putting those 3 troops, the Urskula, Ursuvius, and King Mikhail, all in there. And then I have one of these weapons that generates mana for Urska allies, green and brown gems. Now, I'm using the Slayer class just because I'm trying to level that up, so I'm trying to use it as much as possible. But what would be the best thing to use for this would probably be the Sentinel class, wherever it is here. Here it is. Because the Sentinel class is a Urska troop. That's what it's considered. So it will get, you'll get bonuses for using it with a full Urska team. Plus this troop here could give it 50% starting mana. So that would be the best class to use for this in this event with these troops. But like I said, I'm trying to level up the Slayer class. So I'm using it as much as possible. But yeah, we're going to be doing 160% spell damage. This is... I can go back in there and go over maybe a couple other weapons or troops in a second. But yeah, this is early on, as always, is just going to be super easy because the life and armor of all these troops is so low. So we'd have to go through quite a few of these. But I really think that this team is pretty cool. And you might have just one of these legendaries. You might have King Mikhail or you might have Ursuvius. And just one of them in your team would be still pretty good. But let's take a quick look and see what other troops we can use in here. You have Baba Yaga, which deals spell damage to the last 2 enemies and silences them. So that's pretty good. Let's see what else we got here. Well, this Wercat deals damage to 1 enemy, and then if there's 13 or more red gems, deal triple damage, and create 8 red gems. Yeah, I mean, it could be interesting. Most of these troops, I think, are just doing, like, single damage to the enemy. Oh, this does splash damage, so that's kind of nice. This creates red gems. This thing gives life to all allies, so if you're looking for gaining more life, kind of a support troop there, that's a good one. I'm just flipping through these real quick to see what we got, and there isn't really too many other troops that do, like, damage to all enemies. And now let's take a look at weapons real quick. So we do have the Shield of Our Sky, which is a great defensive weapon, but we got Hammer of Urskaya, which could be good. It does splash damage. That's pretty cool. You got the Urskayan Crown if you wanted to generate mana for troops, red mana. Otherwise, yeah, there isn't really a fantastic selection for weapons here. You also have Beastly Claw, which deals 34 damage to the first 2 enemies, boosted by allied beasts. Summon a beast. So yeah, like, it's not a horrible selection. I mean, I've seen events with better selections than this, but it's still not horrible. Yeah. So I don't think there'll be really any too much trouble actually coming up with a team here for everybody to use. Of course, like, the best thing would probably be to have one of these legendary troops. So, King Mikhail or Ursuvius, like, if you have one of those two, if you have both, it's probably the best. But if you just have at least one of them, you know, that's at least good. Because these are the guys in this kingdom that are going to do damage to all enemies. And that's probably the best damage type here for this event. Yeah, let's go ahead and use the mana generating weapon. We got some brown and green there created. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for my team. This is what I'm going to be using is Axe of the North, King Mikhail, Ursuvius, and Urskula. As this is the team I'm going to use probably all the way through the event. And there you go. So I don't really think there's anything else for me to cover in this video. We went over pretty much everything that's new this week. The only thing later this week, I should have time to do a quick video on that Siege event that's going to be coming out in like 3.5 days. So I'll probably do another video for that later this week. And that's about it, guys, for this video. So I just appreciate you guys a whole lot. I appreciate you for watching my videos and taking the time to do that. And I'll catch you on the next video. Later.